U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says there's no question that Russia interfered in last year's U.S. presidential election, despite the lack of any published evidence.
I have seen the intelligence reports, Chuck, and yes, I don't think there's any question that the Russians were playing around in our electoral processes.
His statement directly contradicts comments made by the Russian foreign minister during his visit to Washington last week. After Sergei Lavrov met Donald Trump and Tillerson, journalists seemed only interested in asking about that issue.
So much focus on contacts that Trump campaign people may have had with Russia.
I think this is humiliating for the American people to be told that Russia pulls all the strings in the U.S. domestic politics.
Meeting with President Trump, did he raise U.S. concerns about Russian interference in the U.S. elections?
When Mr. Trump and I talked, we never touched upon any of that nonsense.
We've seen the U.S. intelligence agencies accuse Russia of interfering in the elections.
You all seem to be reasonable people, and you still ask that.
Did Mr. Trump raise the question of Russian interference in the U.S. elections?
I just said that President Trump has stated publicly that these are all false stories. Please, do give us at least one fact, and then we can react. We haven't been presented a single fact, including in the Senate, where they've had special committees appointed just for that. Listen, this is not serious.
Many of the claims regarding alleged Russian meddling in the U.S. elections have been spread through questionable online publications. And it turns out that even experienced politicians can fall victim to fake news online, which they then spread further through major news networks. RT's Miguel Francis Santiago is across the story.
A U.S. Democratic Senator, Ed Markey, sat in a puddle after he realized he just spread a fake news story on CNN.
There are very strong allegations that the Russians had relationships with people inside of the Trump campaign. In fact, subpoenas have now been issued in Northern Virginia with regard to General Flynn and General Flynn's associates. A grand jury has been impaneled up in New York.
Sure, there are subpoenas in Virginia, but there's absolutely no mention of a grand jury by any credible news source. Markey quickly realized this and had a press release issuing an official apology. No big deal, right? But this is where it kind of became a big deal, when a man of Markey's position, who aside from being a senator, also happens to be a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, gets his info from credible fake news sources. According to a report from the Daily Caller and a Guardian reporter who spoke to Markey's assistant, the sources were, lo and behold, the Palmer Report, a left-wing blog known for making fantastic and unproven claims. And the other source was, meet Louise Mensch, a former British MP known for accusing many people of being secret Russian spies, to no avail, of course.
You've also claimed that President Putin had Andrew Breitbart murdered.
I said on Twitter in a tweet, I believe that to be the case.
You may believe there are fairies at the bottom of your garden. It doesn't make it true.
I may indeed, and if I say so, then that's my belief.
I just think that if you want to be a journalist, beliefs have to be backed up with some evidence.
Really? What, do you have a faith?
Yeah. And here's another little bit of artwork from her blog.
My theory, which I report here, is that crackers with attitude conspired with Russian moles within the FBI and NY in New York, with encouragement of Sputnik, to invent a criminal case against Anthony Weiner in order that Russia's Nikulin could plant Hillary Clinton's emails on Weiner's now discoverable laptop.
Allow me to decipher. Mensch says that the Russians used hackers posing as a teenage girl to lure in Anthony Weiner and get him to send those famous naked pictures. Then the Sputnik news agency tipped off Russian moles in the FBI to open up a criminal case against Weiner and therefore get access to his laptop, where Hillary's lost emails were then planted, knowing full well they'd be discovered during the investigation during the 2016 presidential campaign. And all of this under the pretext of Operation Trump Russia, or installing Trump in the White House. Did you stop laughing yet? And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a source from which a respectable Democratic senator, a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, apparently gets his views on Russia from. Oh, and by the way, we asked the senator's spokesperson, Giselle Barry, for comment, and it's been, well, more than 24 hours now, and we still got none. Miguel Francis Santiago, RT.
Emmanuel Macron's been inaugurated as the 25th president of the French Republic, and he's getting straight down to business. Today, he will announce his new prime minister, as well as other cabinet appointments. But even though Macron's hardly settled into the Élysée palace, he's already under attack. The former prime minister, Emmanuel Valls, laid into him, calling him a nasty politician.
I'm extremely clear about Macron and his team. Hollande is nasty, but just in one way. Macron is nasty, but he has no principles, so no limits.
And Valls could have made other less stinging comparisons too. Like his predecessor, Macron has picked Germany for his first trip abroad as president too. Peter Oliver takes up the story.
Emmanuel Macron will be hoping that his first foreign visit as French president goes a lot more smoothly than his predecessors did. Both Macron and François Hollande picked right here in Berlin as their first port of call on the international scene. However, last time around when François Hollande got on the plane to head here to Berlin, well, he did it immediately after his inauguration. His plane was struck by lightning. It had to then return back to Paris. He had to get on a completely different plane before making it here to Berlin for his meeting in the Chancellery with Angela Merkel. Well, quite more than just a little bit delayed. Emmanuel Macron, of course, hoping for none of those type of problems, those type of hiccups as he heads here. And he should receive a very cordial welcome from Angela Merkel. She's spoken publicly about how happy she is to have another pro-EU leader amongst the European heads of government.
We are happy that Mark Rutte and Emmanuel Macron, people who work on behalf of Europe, won their elections in the Netherlands and France. Emmanuel Macron, the new French president, showed his passion in the debates against his rival. We will do everything not only to help France, but also to shape the future European road together with France.
But the new French president, Emmanuel Macron, has told EU leadership, and particularly Germany, that he won't accept the status quo.
Germany benefits from the imbalance within the Eurozone and achieves very high trade surpluses. Its economic strength in its present form is not acceptable. There must be a rebalancing.
It's interesting, those comments from Macron there, because although today will be all smiles and handshakes when he meets with Angela Merkel, there is a major issue for Macron, and that's the economy. He was an economics minister under François Hollande, and people will be looking to him to make sure that he puts right what they say, some of the wrongs he put in place while he was in that position. It's trade that's a major concern. Germany has a record-breaking trade deficit. It's 250 billion euros in the black. That's after 2016. France, by comparison, around 50 billion in the red. They have a trade deficit. So Emmanuel Macron is looking to try and level the playing fields on trade within the Eurozone. But he may come up against a bit of a wall there with Angela Merkel, not wanting to give away too much of the crown jewels of her economic success here in Germany, particularly ahead of an election of her own coming up in September.
War-ravaged Yemen now faces another threat on top of the violence and famine, an outbreak of cholera. More on that story after the break.